harvesting your crops. Anything else like watering them, treating them, won't give you XP. However, there is something that's worth understanding about farming to maximize the experience you receive from each crop you harvest. Essentially, the XP you receive from harvesting is determined by the health of the individual crop. The health of a crop will gradually climb after it is planted. So, if it's purely experience points that you're after, waiting until the crop is in its seed-bearing phase, that's the phase that comes after the blooming phase when it's first harvestable, will give you the best results, assuming that you've kept them well watered and free of disease. Experience gain is not related to the yield you receive either, but for the best yields you'll want to fertilize your crops and ideally harvest them during the summer months, as your yield is affected by the seasons and summer will give the best return on investment. There is a single chance to gain farming experience from watching the Life and Living channel, which is on day 2 at 6 PM as part of the show Exposure Survival. You'll gain 75 experience points or more if you've got an XP multiplier product. Alright, the next one on our list is First Aid. I think it's fair to say that this is probably the least popular skill in Project Zomboid, one that I think could probably use an overhaul, but if you do choose to level this skill, you will be able to heal from fractures and deep wounds faster. These wounds will have less impact on your character movement and weapon attacks, and you'll also be able to complete medical actions faster, amongst some other minor benefits. If for any reason you want to start with higher first aid skill, you can choose the doctor occupation for 3 levels in first aid, or nurse for 2 levels in first aid. Both the first aider and former scout trades provide an extra level in the skill as well. Now, granted, I actually don't have too much experience with leveling first aid, but I do know that there is a tried and trusted way of gaining XP in first aid, which will prevent too much damage to your character and allow you to farm experience. For this, we're going to make sure that we have plenty of disinfected bandages on standby, a suture needle and a suture needle holder, and lastly, a set of tweezers for good measure. You're also going to want to ensure that wherever you perform this technique, you've cleared the area of zombies, as the last thing you want is one of them coming waddling over whilst you're doing this. Then, we're going to smash a window. Using the smashed window, we're going to do what all of our mothers tried so desperately to keep us from doing as kids, and we're going to step in glass with bare feet. Once we have a wound, we simply remove the glass using the tweezers. As long as you stay stood in the glass shards, the wounds will continue to appear, and you'll just keep removing them. Keep an eye on your health, and as soon as you feel you've gained enough experience from removing the glass, you can step away, stitch up any wounds, and apply a bandage. You'll want to keep tending to these wounds to make sure that they don't get infected, and take it easy for a couple of days until they heal. But once they do, you'll come away with a whole bunch of experience in first aid, assuming that you've read the necessary skill book before attempting this technique. So, moving on from first aid now, we come to the electrical skill. If you're wondering why anyone would bother with electrical as a skill, the biggest benefit is to hotwire vehicles. Having 1 level in electrical and 2 levels in mechanics means that you'll be able to hotwire vehicles, meaning that they won't require a key to operate them. Other benefits include being able to craft certain engineering creations like noisemakers and pipe bombs, as well as switching regular light sources to battery-powered ones so that they don't drain your fuel. You can choose the electrician occupation for 3 levels in electrical, or engineer for 1 level in electrical. Now, most people that have played some Project Zomboid likely know that the easiest way to level your electrical skill is to dismantle electrical objects like radios and digital watches. So naturally, gathering up digital watches and radios from zombie corpses and dismantling them can provide you with a bunch of experience, specifically 0.5 XP per device. Each device will give you some electronic scrap. However, what you might not know is that the electrical skill is also gained from repairing a generator. You'll gain 1.25 XP from each repair. This is without the buff from skill books, traits, or occupations, and conveniently, each repair consumes just 1 electronic scrap and repairs a generator by 4%. So, if you've been using a generator at your base for a while, you can put the electronic scrap from dismantling all of those watches to good use and level your electrical skill in the meantime. I'm going to move to mechanics next, as this is most frequently paired with electrical to hotwire vehicles. Outside of that though, mechanics is greatly valued for its ability to repair or swap out vehicle parts and maintain your vehicle's condition in Project Zomboid. You can choose the mechanic occupation to start with 3 levels of this skill, or take the trait amateur mechanic for 1 level. Leveling mechanics is sometimes a bit daunting for newer players, but it's actually really simple once you know what to do, especially when when you're just getting started. With the first couple of levels in mechanics, all you need is a screwdriver. Once you have that, you can remove the headlights, tail lights, radio, and battery of any vehicle you come across. These are guaranteed success, and each one will give you a small amount of XP. Installing these parts after you've removed them will also grant you the same amount of XP, so that's worth doing as well. You can do this once per day per vehicle. Now, this is the multiplayer friendly strategy that I'd recommend for leveling, as it will keep vehicles in good condition for other players, but there is an easier way to do this in single player. If you don't have to worry about scrapping a vehicle's condition, the simplest way to level mechanics is just to try and remove or replace as many parts as you can from a vehicle. The chance of success doesn't matter here. In fact, the more you fail the exercise, the more XP you're going to get from doing so. Unlike our previous multiplayer friendly strategy, this can be performed multiple times in a row until you have gained the XP you need. So really, you can just pick a sacrificial vehicle and start working. Keep in mind that you might need some more tools for this, like wrenches, jacks, or lug wrenches. Lastly, it's important to note that whilst there aren't any episodes to level mechanics on Life and Living, there are VHS tapes that can be found in the world called Car Zone that will level your mechanics skill, so those can be very useful as well if you want to avoid actually working on vehicles. You may have noticed, if you've been tackling mechanics already, that metalworking also comes into play with repairing certain vehicle parts. Leveling this skill will also allow you to build structures that are stronger than wooden ones and craft metal barricades. For most actions relating to leveling metalworking, we're going to need a propane torch and welding mask. Now, once again, I'm going to go through two strategies here, one for single player and one for multiplayer. The single player strategy for leveling metalworking is an easy one and is quite simply to dismantle metal objects. Specifically, the best XP gains that you can get from any furniture items comes from dumpsters, large metal shelving units, and bathtubs. These each grant 5 experience points. Most of these will be failures in the early stages, but as your metalworking level increases, you'll be more successful and gain more supplies from using this method. If you're on a multiplayer server, or to be honest just want to level as quickly as possible, dismantling car wrecks is the best way to go. Not only are you going to clear the roads for other players without destroying loot containers, but you're going to have a huge collection of scrappable vehicles in one place if you pick one of the wreck pileups like on the West Point Bridge, for example. Keep in mind that when you are dismantling objects, you're going to use propane, so you're going to need to have some spare propane canisters on standby. These can be taken from any
Ay, me están
propane
llegando
bar
muchos
found in the world.
pedidos.
Once you've done a batch of dismantling, you can use
Me
either
quería
3
poner a
metal
jugar.
bars or 1 metal sheet on windows to barricade them and gain 1.5 XP per barricade for some extra experience.
Total que
And remember, you can do this on both sides of the window. These can be
aguanten, déjenle bajo
constructed
el
at level
volumen a
0
YouTube.
without any required knowledge from magazines. As you find more magazines, you can craft objects with metalworking that give more XP. Crafting a metal
Total que,
which can be done at level 2, gives you 3.75 XP, for example. From here, the most cost-efficient way to level is metal crates.
para poder tener eso, tengo que ser carpintero. Para subir carpintería, pues tengo que hacer carpintería. So, me voy a dedicar a deshacer toda mi casa. Vamos a comer. Vamos a comernos todos los frijolitos.
To carry out the next step of leveling and max out your skill. So, once we have some materials, we're simply going to apply patches to various spots of our clothing. For this reason, overalls make for the best practice piece here, as it has the most spots of any clothing item that we can add patches to. If you're just practicing, I'd suggest using ripped sheets for this, as these are the easiest parts to find over denim or leather and will allow you to save the good stuff for your own clothing that you plan to wear. Each time you add a patch to your clothing, you'll gain either 0.25 XP or 0.5 XP randomly. Once the item is all patched up, just removing the patches and any successfully recovered ones will give you 1 full XP point. If you lose the patch, you'll gain 0.25 experience points. The chance of getting the patch back will gradually increase as you level and starts at 10%. As a side note, for when you're making your own padded clothing, leather strips provide the most defense gain, so I'd advise using that. So that's all the crafting skills now covered. You now know how to level them in the most efficient ways currently known to Project Zomboid players. Now, we just have 3 survival skills left to cover. Now I'm going to start with fishing. This is honestly one of the best skills to have in Project Zomboid if you're living near water, giving you a constant source of food when you're
No voy a
fishing.
poder seguir jugando.
Choose the occupation fisherman for 3 levels. In fishing,
Queda bimbo.
or the trait angler
Baila,
for 1 level.